Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Good morning, everybody. We've been going through this last chapter in the book In the Buddha's Words, and we are now in the section on the Arahant, so we're coming to the very end of the book. Last time I did the section which has the Khemaka Sutta, that's the discourse from Samyutta Nikaya featuring Venerable Khemaka, which explains the difference, or at least it clarifies the difference between a disciple in training, one who has reached one of the stages of realization but not yet arhat. This is somebody from the stage of stream enterer, once returner, non-returner. So somebody who has seen the truth of the Dhamma and thereby removed all views of a self, views by which one identifies the self with one or another of the five aggregates, or poses some relationship between the idea of self and the five aggregates. That is the view of self. But the disciple in training still has this residual desire I am, this conceit I am, this underlying tendency I am. So that remains all the way up until the final stage of arhat. And so the disciple in training has to continue with the practice, and what is mentioned here is contemplating the arising and passing away of the five aggregates. And as the disciple continues to do that, then eventually even that residual desire I am, residual conceit I am, underlying tendency I am, this comes to be uprooted, completely removed. And that brings the attainment of arhat, liberation. So now we come to another sutta which deals with the same issue but explains it from a somewhat different angle. This is we're now on page 406 in the book, top of the page. Okay, in this sutta the Buddha addresses the monks and he says, there is a method by means of which a monk who is a trainee, standing on the plane of the trainee, the level of the trainee, can understand, I am a trainee, while a monk beyond training, one beyond training, this in Pali is called aseka. The difference between the two is the difference between seka. So the word that's translated as trainee is the word seka, which comes from the space on the noun sika, which means training. So texts sometimes speak about the training in the higher morality, higher ethics, the training in the higher mind, which is samadhi, and the training in the higher wisdom or insight. So one who is engaged with this training, and technically it means one who has actually already obtained the insight into the truth of the Dhamma, but now is practicing a more intensified training. So one who is engaged with this training is called a trainee, and this means somebody who is either a stream enterer, once returner, non-returner, or even somebody still very close to arhatship, practicing the path to arhatship. And then the other type of disciple is called ustheta, which means a non-trainee. Literally it means non-trainee, but it doesn't mean one who doesn't take up the training at all, but the real sense is one who has completed the training. So that's why I translate this one beyond training. It's not so literal, but it brings out the intended sense. Whereas if you say non-trainee, then anybody reads it and says, I'm a theta. I just sit and drink beer and watch sports games on television, so I'm a theta. Okay, so the Buddha is going to explain, like this is the question, how does one know whether one is a trainee or a non-trainee? So the Buddha is going to explain a method by which one can determine on what level one stands. Okay, so the first explanation the Buddha gives, here a monk who is a trainee understands as it really is, this is suffering, this is the origin of suffering, this is the cessation of suffering, this is the way leading to the cessation of suffering. So what we have here are the Four Noble Truths. And so the one who truly understands the Four Noble Truths, who understands them as they really are, becomes a trainee. So we shouldn't think that we read Walpole or Rahula, what the Buddha taught, or Piyadaci-Thera, the Buddha's Ancient Path, which has explanations of the Four Noble Truths, or any other book on the Four Noble Truths, and think, I understand them as they really are. But what's meant by understanding the Four Noble Truths here is understanding them through direct realization, direct penetration of the Four Noble Truths. And so through direct penetration, or let us say through some experiential understanding, we can have knowledge of suffering, some understanding of the origin of suffering, and then we might be able to infer. I was going to say infer inferentially, but that's we can know inferentially, or we can infer that with the elimination of craving, there'll be an elimination of suffering, and through some practice of the Noble Eightfold Path, we can get some confidence that this is the way to the end of suffering. But it's only the trainee, one who has reached at least the level of the stream enterer, who has actually opened what is called the eye of Dhamma. The eye of Dhamma which sees the third Noble Truth, the truth of the cessation of suffering, which is nirvana. And so by seeing the cessation of suffering, nirvana as the cessation of suffering, then one has a kind of platform from which one can look back at the five aggregates themselves and understand this is dukkha. Not necessarily in the sense of experienced suffering, but one knows these five aggregates are bound up with what is unsatisfactory, inadequate, defective. And then one knows through direct penetration that these five aggregates originate from craving. And one knows Nibbana is the cessation of dukkha, of suffering. And now, because one has practiced the Noble Eightfold Path to the stage of realization, one knows this is the way to the cessation of suffering. Okay, so that's one way that one understands I am a trainee. Okay, then the second way, maybe it seem a little controversial, but here a trainee considers the question not, is there outside here, which usually is taken to mean outside the Buddha's dispensation, another ascetic or Brahmin who teaches a Dhamma which is so real, so true, and so actual as the Blessed One, the Buddha, does. And then one understands that there is no other ascetic or Brahmin outside here who teaches a Dhamma which is so real, true, and actual as the Buddha does. Okay, so that's a method by which the monk who's a trainee has this understanding, I am a trainee. So this is maybe an indication that he has this confirmed confidence in the Buddha and the Dhamma. Okay, then comes the third way. Actually, the third way is the way that I'm particularly interested in here. Here, the monk who is a trainee understands the 5 spiritual faculties. Okay, these are the 5 mental qualities which dominate in the development of the practice. These are faith, energy, mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom. Okay, then comes the statement a little bit obscure. It needs some explanation. He does not yet dwell, having contacted with the body, that which is their destination, their culmination, their fruit, their final goal. But having pierced it through with wisdom, he sees. This too is a method by means of which a monk who is a trainee and so on understands, I am a trainee. Okay, this is the way I would understand this statement. We have the 5 faculties, and so the trainee understands the 5 faculties, and he has penetrated with wisdom the final goal of the 5 faculties, which means that he sees it, he has seen it. Now the final goal of the 5 faculties is Nibbana, that is the state of liberation beyond the cycle of birth and death. And so the trainee has penetrated or pierced with wisdom this goal of the 5 faculties. He has seen Nibbana, seen the deathless. And yet it says he doesn't yet dwell, having contacted that destination, that final goal, with the body. And the way I understand this, but I understand this to mean that even though the monk who's the trainee, or any person who's the trainee, sees Nibbana as the final goal, but he hasn't yet fully embodied that goal within his own experience. Because there's still this residue of defilement which blocks that full embodying of the goal. Maybe to use an analogy, I might have a pitcher of clear water, clear, clean water. Then I have a cup, maybe in which 15 minutes ago I drank a cup of coffee, and there's still at the bottom of the cup maybe a little bit, like 1/8 of an inch of the coffee and some of the coffee grinds in the cup. And so I know I can see the clear water. I know what the clear water is. But when I pour the clear water into the cup, it gets mixed with a little residue of the coffee and the coffee grind. And so when I drink it, it's not yet completely clear and clean water. For the ordinary person, maybe it's like the cup is like 3/4 of the way full of coffee. And so if we pour clear water into the cup, it's still pretty much coffee. It just becomes a little cooler and a little more diluted. But in the case of the trainee, it's like the cup is almost finished, but there's this 1/8 of an inch left of a little bit of coffee mixed with the coffee grind. And so when I pour the clear water in, when I drink it, I don't get the clear water. There's still a little bit of the taste of the coffee, and I get some of the pieces of coffee grinds in my mouth when I drink it. So this is like the training. He can't yet perfectly embody, perfectly encompass nibbana in his own. Here the word body is used in a very broad sense, not just the physical body, but his own person, we might say. Okay, then comes the contrast, by means of which the monk beyond training, standing on the plane of one beyond training, understands I am one beyond training. And so this monk beyond training understands the 5 spiritual faculties, faith and so on, for wisdom. He dwells, and he has pierced it through with wisdom, and he sees it, but he also dwells having contacted with the body, that which is their destination, their culmination, their fruit, their final goal. So because he has eliminated even these subtle residual defilements, the desire I am, the conceit I am, the underlying tendency I am, as well as the craving for existence, the residue of ignorance, he's able to fully embody the final goal within himself. Okay, then the second method by which the monk who has reached the stage beyond training can validate that he has reached the stage beyond training. He understands, now we come the 6 faculties. It's the same Pali word, indriya, but these are the 6 sense faculties. The eye faculty, ear faculty, nose, tongue, body, and mind faculty, the faculty of thought and intellection. Okay, so then he understands these 6 faculties will cease completely and totally without remainder, and no other 6 faculties will arise anywhere in any way. Okay, so in the case of the ordinary person, the 6 faculties cease at death, and then with the occurrence of rebirth, rebecoming, another set of the 6 sense faculties arise, and then through the 6 sense faculties there comes contact, feeling, based on feeling there arises craving, through craving there arises clinging, through clinging there comes the karmic activities, and the karmic activities generate still a new existence, new birth, old age, sickness, and death. But the one who is beyond training, that the Arhat understands that with the passing away of the body, there's no more ignorance, no more craving, and so no coming into being of a new set of 5 aggregates. Since there are no more 5 aggregates, no arising again of the 6 sense faculties. And so no feeling, no more feeling, craving, clinging, and so on. Okay, so this is the method by means of which the one who is beyond training understands I am one beyond training. Okay, so this passage is intended to provide several criteria for distinguishing the trainee and the non-trainee, the one beyond training, the Arhat. Okay, now we come to the sutta. It's actually an excerpt from the sutta, which uses a number of metaphors to describe the Arhat. And then the passage will explain what is meant by these metaphors. So the Arhat is one whose crossbar has been lifted, whose trench has been filled in, whose pillar has been uprooted, who has no bolt, the noble one whose banner is lowered, whose burden is lowered, who is unfettered. So what's meant by saying that the crossbar has been lifted? For some reason, I don't remember why, the crossbar is ignorance. And so the Arahat has abandoned ignorance, cut it off at the root, made it like a palm stump, done away with it so that it can no longer arise again in the future. Okay, how is he one whose trench has been filled in? The Arhat has abandoned what is called jati samsara, that's the round of repeated births. Punabhava, it's the process of renewed existence, cut it off at the root, and so on. Then the Arhat is called one whose pillar has been uprooted because he's abandoned craving. He's called one who has no bolt because he has abandoned the 5 lower fetters, cut them off at the root. This is not unique to the Arhat, this one. Also the non-returner has also abandoned the 5 lower fetters. But this is one amongst the achievements of the Arhat. And then he's called the noble one whose banner is lowered. I think this we could see the sense. Usually we think of ourselves as sort of flying our own flag. We use that expression? Flying our own banner. Do you have that expression? You have to remember, I lost track of my English. Living 23 years in Sri Lanka and the last 6-7 years in mostly Chinese-speaking monasteries. Sometimes refreshing courses in English, refresher courses in English. Okay, so we say that somebody flies his own flag, blows his own trumpet, maybe we say, sort of letting others know about his achievements, accomplishments, skills. And that's all a manifestation of conceit, the conceit I am. But the Arhat is one whose banner is lowered. He doesn't fly his own flag anymore because he has abandoned the conceit I am. But that banner is also a burden and a fetter. So he's lowered his burden and given up the fetter. Okay, next passage describes 9 things that an Arhat cannot do. He's incapable of transgression in regard to 9 things. Okay, he's incapable of destroying life, killing a living being, incapable of taking what is not given, incapable of engaging in the sexual act because he's cut off all sensual craving. He's incapable of telling a deliberate lie and incapable of making use of stored up enjoyment as he did in the past when he was a householder. This is the one which maybe is a little bit not so obvious, but you see, the Arhat is no longer capable of taking things that can be enjoyed, including foodstuffs, and then storing them up from one day to the next, thinking, what I received today, I will use tomorrow. And this can be understood especially against the monastic background of the Buddha's time, when the ideal for the monk is to go on alms rounds. So one goes on alms rounds, receives what food one is given early in the day, and one uses it that same day before the middle of the day. That's the time for the meal. And after that, one doesn't save any foodstuffs not for the evening, because taking the evening meal is not allowed. And one doesn't save the foodstuffs even for tomorrow, thinking, I'll eat this tomorrow. So there are certain things which are considered 7-day allowable, certain things like things with sugar, honey, oil, butter, and ghee are 7 days allowable. Other things that can be consumed can be kept for life. These are medicines. But actual foodstuffs can be kept from one day to the next. Okay, so these are 5 things. And those are 5 types of actions. 4 bodily actions, and then the verbal action of telling a deliberate lie. So now we come to 4, well, again it's actions, but it's referring to the motives of the actions, not to the specific actions themselves, but to the motives. He is incapable of taking a wrong course of action on account of desire, on account of hatred, on account of delusion, or on account of fear. Those 4 mental states can no longer motivate his behavior. Okay, so those are 9 things that the Arhat cannot do. Next comes a passage which I call mind unshaken. And here Venerable Sariputta is speaking to describe the equanimity or imperturbability of the Arhat. So he says, when a monk is thus liberated in mind, even if powerful, visible forms come into range of his eyes, they do not obsess his mind. His mind remains uncontaminated by them. It's steady, attained to imperturbability, and he contemplates or observes their fall, their passing away. The same with powerful sounds, odors, labors, tactile objects, and mental phenomena. All of them, when they come into range of his sense faculties, they do not obsess his mind. They're unable to sway the mind either to desire and craving or to upset the mind with fear, with anger, with dejection. Then Sariputta illustrates this with the simile. This is like a stone pillar which might be 16 meters long, and 8 meters of it are put into the ground, while 8 meters rise above the ground. That even if a powerful rainstorm comes, the pillar cannot be buzzed, moved, shaken. It will never tremble. And so that is like the mind of the Arhat. Even in the face of very seductive, attractive, beautiful forms, they won't detract the mind. And very fearful, terrifying, or upsetting forms and so on will not disturb his mind. Okay, then comes what are called the 10 powers of the Arhat. And here the Buddha is speaking to Venerable Sariputta, and he asks Sariputta to describe these powers of the Arhat. on the basis of which he claims that he's attained the destruction of the asatas, the taints. So then Sariputta explains these 10 powers. First, for the arhat, all sankharas, all conditioned phenomena, formations, have been seen as they really are to be impermanent. Then he sees that all sensual pleasures are similar to a charcoal pit. They might seem to be to promise delight and enjoyment, but when one becomes entangled in them, then they lead to pain, discomfort, and to suffering. Then the mind of the arhat slants, slopes, and inclines to seclusion. So naturally, the arhat inclines to the life of seclusion, secluded meditation. So some dwell in the midst of the community, the monastic order. They might be working for the education of their fellow monks, teaching the laity. But the mind is naturally inclined to seclusion. So whenever they have the opportunity, they will go into secluded meditation. And then even when in the midst of activity, the mind is able to just pull back from that activity and dwell in an inward state of peace. So this is the mind slants, slopes, inclines to seclusion, dwells in seclusion, delights in renunciation, and has entirely given up all things that are a basis for the taints, for the defilements. Okay, so these are 3 of the powers. Then the arhat has the next powers indicate the full development of the 7 groups of the age to enlightenment. So the arhat has fully developed the 4 establishments of mindfulness, the 4 right kinds of striving, the 4 bases for spiritual power, the 5 spiritual faculties, the 5 powers, the 7 factors of enlightenment, and the Noble Eightfold Path. Okay, so these are the 10 powers of the monk who has reached the destruction of the asatas. And next comes a passage which will describe, why I wanted to include this passage is because it describes what are called the 4 foundations of an artha. The Pali word here is adhikana. The excerpt that comes now, starting on the top of page 410, is actually a continuation of the passage that we looked at earlier in the chapter on wisdom. It's the passage on the 6 elements that occurs from page 350 to page 353. And both in this whole sutta, the Buddha is speaking to a younger monk named Bhikkhu, and the Buddha first explains to him the meditation on the 6 elements. And so he says, after he's explained the meditation on the 6 elements, the Buddha says, then, after contemplating the 6 elements, there remains only equanimity, purified and bright, malleable, wieldy, and radiant. This seems to be the equanimity of the formless meditation. Okay, so then the meditating monk understands, if I was to direct this equanimity so purified and bright to the base of the infinity of space, and to develop my mind accordingly, then this equanimity of mind, supported by this base, clinging to it, would remain for a very long time. That is, here he's explaining how the meditator develops that first formless meditation, which is called the base of the infinity of space. Now, if after developing that formless meditation, he lets his mind rest in that attainment with some attachment to it, without seeing it with wisdom, then the subtle clinging to that very refined equanimity, that subtle clinging would remain attached to it. And on the basis of that subtle clinging, at death the mind would be reborn in that level or that stage of existence called the realm of infinite space. And on taking rebirth there, it would remain for a very long time. I think they say in the text that the lifespan there is 20,000 cosmic aeons. And a cosmic aeon is something like the Big Bang and Big Contraction. So that's what estimated 35,000 years, something like that. 30,000. I'm sorry, 30 billion years. So that's 20,000 by 30 billion. Anybody quick in multiplication here? Okay. But eventually it would come to an end, and then the mind would fall out from the sphere of infinite space, and then would wake up come back to a 9-to-5 job in Detroit or Omaha, Nebraska. And then if it becomes a little mischievous or naughty, then maybe it falls down to the lower realm, spends several hundred years, or maybe several decades as a dog or a cat, or several hundred years as a hungry ghost, or several thousand years in the hell realm. Okay, so then next the Buddha shows that one even develops that equanimity a stage higher to the base of the infinity of consciousness. In that case, if one clings to that meditative state, then that will govern the rebirth process, and it said one will be reborn for 40,000 years. 40,000 cosmic aeons, 40,000 kalpas. Similarly, one could move to the third formless attainment, the base of nothingness. If one enjoys that equanimity, that peacefulness, and clings to it, then that will govern the rebirth process, rebirth into the realm of nothingness, where the lifespan is said to be 60,000 cosmic aeons, 60,000 kalpas. And then if one pushes even higher to the base of neither perception nor non-perception, this is the highest formless meditation, and then one develops the mind accordingly, and one clings to that state, then that will govern the rebirth process. So one will take rebirth in the realm of neither perception nor non-perception, and one can remain there, they say, for 84,000 cosmic aeons. It seems that you go from 20,000 to 40,000 to 60,000, then to 84,000. Maybe this is like an executive who gets a bonus You get 4,000 extra classifications. I remember when I was a young boy, there used to be a program on television. I don't think it's on anymore. It's called the $64,000 question. They got it wrong. They should have made it either the $60,000 question or the $84,000 question. If it was in a Buddhist country, it would be the $84,000 question, since 84 for some reason has a kind of mystical significance in Buddhism. Okay, so these are the possibilities, but now this meditator understands thus: if I were to develop this equanimity so purified and bright to the base of the infinity of space, and to develop my mind accordingly, this would be conditioned. This is his key to penetrating the state with wisdom. He knows that the state, as peaceful as it is, as lofty and exalted as it is something which arises through conditions. It's supported by conditions. And so for each of the other levels of meditative attainment. And so it says, he does not construct or generate any volition tending towards either existence or non-existence. That is, he doesn't lean through craving for existence and hold on to that meditative state, hoping to continue to exist in the realm that corresponds to that state. For if he does so, that would show a tendency to craving, to clinging, and that would bind him, keep him bound to that realm of existence, and more broadly it would keep him bound to the cycle of birth and death. On the other hand, if he turns yearning for non-existence, seeking to extinguish or to annihilate himself, this would show some kind of tendency to aversion, to repulsion. And so it says, he does not construct or generate any volition tending towards either existence or non-existence. Okay, so since he does not do so, he does not cling to anything in the world. Not clinging, he is not agitated. Not being agitated, he personally attains nibbana, and he understands birth is destroyed, the spiritual life has been lived, what has to be done has been done, there is no more coming back to any state of being, any state in the round of birth and death. Okay, then the next few passages show the Arhat's equanimity in the face of the different kinds of feeling. So when he feels a pleasant feeling, he understands it's impermanent. He doesn't hold to it or cling to it. He doesn't take delight in it. Similarly with painful feelings, with neutral feelings. Whatever feeling he experiences it detached from it. And he understands, when he feels a feeling terminating with the body, he understands, I feel a feeling terminating with the body. When he feels a feeling terminating with life, he understands, I feel a feeling terminating with life. And he understands, on the dissolution of the body, with the ending of life, all that is felt not being delighted in will become cool right here. Okay, so all of the feelings, he takes no delight in them, and so he knows that when life passes away, then all of feeling will come to an end, and there will be no feeling beyond this, just like the lamp extinguished through lack of fuel. Okay, now we come to the passage on the four foundations. The four foundations are the foundation of wisdom, the foundation of truth, the foundation of relinquishment, and the foundation of peace. So first the Buddha explains the foundation of wisdom. He says, a monk possessing this wisdom possesses the supreme foundation of wisdom. For this is the supreme noble wisdom, the knowledge of the destruction of all suffering. The destruction of all suffering is Nibbana, so the supreme noble wisdom is the wisdom that knows Nibbana. Okay, then paragraph 26 describes the foundation of truth. His liberation, being founded upon truth, is unshakable. For that is false, which has a deceptive nature, and that is true, which has an undeceptive nature. This is Nibbana. Therefore, a monk possessing this possesses the supreme foundation of truth. For this is the supreme noble truth, Nibbana, which has an undeceptive nature. And here I should explain that in Pali we have the word satya, which is translated truth. Okay, in Pali the word is satya, in Sanskrit satya, and it's based on the root sat, which means literally to be. So in Sanskrit, sat is being or reality. And so in English the word truth usually suggests what we could call propositional truth. The cat is on the mat. The dish is on the table. So you look at it, you look at the table, is the dish there? If it's there, then you confirm the truth of the statement. So this is the way we establish empirical truth or proposition or scientific truth. But the word satya in Pali, Sanskrit satya, involves more than just propositional truth, but it means also what truly is, what is truly real. And so here what the text is saying is that that which has a deceptive nature, that which can be understood in a distorted way, in a diluted way, is ultimately unreal, doesn't have full truth. But that which is true has to be that which is not subject to any, which doesn't deceive the human mind, which cannot be distorted by the human mind. And that is Nibbana, which is beyond all conditions. And so that which is non-deceptive, Nibbana, is called the supreme noble truth. And this is the foundation of truth, the supreme foundation of truth. Okay, then we come to the third foundation. This is the foundation of relinquishment. Okay, so formerly, when this person was ignorant, what comes next sounds a little bit awkward in English. He undertook and accepted acquisitions. Here I have to write another Pali word on the board. The word is upadhi. The word upadhi actually means that which one places close to oneself. That's the literal derivation. And so, within Buddhist discourse, the word upadhi signifies primarily, first, the defilements in the mind, greed, hatred, ignorance, and other defilements. And then the things that one takes upon oneself on account of these defilements. And this is primarily the 5 aggregates. And then as kind of extension of the 5 aggregates, one acquires various material possessions. Well, let's speak more broadly, one can speak of various worldly possessions. So I have a house, a car, stereo set. Do people still have stereo sets? iPod. People still have iPods? Maybe a new one has come out, so they're getting rid of the old one. Okay, so these are the acquisitions, and now one has abandoned them, cut them off at the root, and so on. So therefore, the monk who possesses this possesses the supreme foundation of relinquishment. For this is the supreme noble relinquishment, the relinquishing of all acquisitions. That is, the giving up of the mental defilements, greed, hatred, and delusion, then the giving up of the attachment to the 5 aggregates. Okay, and then in the 4th place, there comes the 4th foundation, which is the foundation called the foundation of peace. Okay, so formerly when he was ignorant, he experienced covetousness, desire, and lust. Those are all synonyms. Now he has abandoned them, cut them off at the root. Formerly, when he was ignorant, he experienced anger, ill will, and hatred. Now he has abandoned them, cut them off at the root. Formerly, when he was ignorant, he experienced ignorance and delusion. Again, these are synonyms. Now he has abandoned them, cut them off at the root. And therefore, a monk possessing this possesses the supreme foundation of peace. For this is the supreme noble peace, that is the pacification, that is the quieting down and complete stilling of lust, hatred, and delusion. Okay, then the Buddha continues, and he says, so it was with reference to this that I said earlier, he stated this earlier in the discourse, one should not neglect wisdom, one should preserve truth, one should cultivate relinquishment, and one should train for peace. Then the Buddha continues, this is a very beautiful passage, he says, the tides of conceiving do not sweep over one who stands upon these foundations. And when the tides of conceiving no longer sweep over him, he is called Muni Santo, which means the sage at peace. And so it was said, and with reference to what was said, now the Buddha is going to speak about the different kinds of deluded thinking, or what's called conceiving, manyana. So he says, I am is a conceiving. That's the conceit, I am. I am this is a conceiving. This is the way the conceit I am turns into a view of self. I am form. I am feeling. I am perception. I am the mental formation. I am consciousness. I shall be is a conceiving. That's the eternalist view. I will live in eternity. I will endure forever. I shall not be is a conceiving. That's the idea that I will be cut off and annihilated at death. What's called the annihilationist view. Then come different variants of the eternalist view. I shall have a physical form. I shall be formless. I shall be percipient. I shall be without perception. I shall be neither percipient nor non-percipient. All these are conceiving. Conceiving is a disease. Conceiving is a tumor. Conceiving is a dart. By overcoming all conceivings, one is called a sage at peace. And the sage at peace is not born, does not age, does not die, he is not shaken, and does not yearn. For there is nothing present in him by which he might be born, no more craving to lead to new birth. Not being born, how could he age? Not aging, how could he die? Not dying, how could he be shaken? Not being shaken, why should he yearn? And so it was with reference to this that it was said, the tides of conceiving do not sweep over one who stands upon these foundations. And when the tides of conceiving no longer sweep over him, he is called the sage at peace. Okay, the last passage in this section is just verses in which the Buddha is praising the Arhats, but I think you can just read these on your own. And any points that seem a little obscure, there are notes that explain them. So at this point, I'll ask whether there's any questions on any of these passages that we have come across so far today. Let me just put my glasses on. Okay, please.
Yeah, I'm wondering if you could talk about the relationship between these passages of the description of Nibbana and each of the elements in like wisdom, peace. I noticed that only one of them is the supreme noble truth called Nibbana.
Yeah.
Does that mean that the relinquishment is not Nibbana, or is it part of Nibbana?
This relinquishment of all acquisitions.
Yeah, and the other ones as well, ignorance.
I would say that, I think that they can be understood as aspects of Nibbana. The way I would understand this, there's a distinction between the Nibbana element with residue and without residue. Or actually, I make a distinction between three Nibbana elements. I call it the Nibbana element with residue, the Nibbana element without residue, and then Nibbana simply is the unconditioned element. So what I would say is that Nibbana, as what is called the supreme truth, this is probably can be understood as the unconditioned Nibbana. Nibbana is that state which is without arising, without change, without passing away. But the Nibbana element with residue, this is Nibbana as it's attained and experienced by the Arhat. And so what I would say is that the relinquishment of all acquisitions highlights this psychological aspect of Nibbana. It's the giving up of all these defilements of the mind. So sometimes Nibbana is described as the destruction of greed, hatred, and delusion. So this is similar to that. And similarly, also the pacification of lust, hatred, and delusion. This also is, I would call this the Nibbana element with residue remaining. Yeah, the residue is the 5 aggregates of the Arhat that constitute his present experience. It's called the residue because these 5 aggregates came into being through the craving and ignorance of the past, and they're molded by past karma. And so it's a residue that remains as long as the lifespan continues. So with the passing away, then there comes the complete liberation from birth and death.
On the conceiving, it occurred to me as I wrote down my notes that he's talking about the Arhat not being swept away by this.
Yeah.
Because I wrote, they do not arise, and then I crossed it out because that's not what is being said. He's not being said that the thought of I'm not, it doesn't arise. It's just that he's not swept away. Is that correct? These things don't sweep over.
I'm just trying to see if that can be read into the passage, because I wouldn't read it that way myself. Yeah, I still wouldn't read it that way. I would read it that these thoughts don't even occur to him.
Okay.
Yeah, they don't arise. Of course, he will have used the idea I am as, we call this like a convenient means of expression, a convenient tool of communication. But for him, the idea I am doesn't reflect back and suggest that there is some kind of truly existent I in there. That there is some self at the root of his experience. But it's just, it makes things easier in communication to express in terms of I think this, I felt this, I am doing that, rather than to say this set of 5 aggregates felt this set of the 5 aggregates was walking into the village this afternoon, this set of 5 aggregates is hungry.
Would you explain the sentence when he feels the being turning into his life?
Okay.
What's the meaning of life and what's the meaning of turning into his life?
Okay. We have two expressions here. When he feels a feeling terminating with the body, he understands I feel a feeling terminating with the body. When he feels a feeling terminating with life, he understands I feel a feeling terminating with life. I take these to be more or less synonymous, and the way I understand it is that when he experiences the feeling, he understands that this feeling will last only as long as the body lasts and only as long as life lasts, but it won't extend beyond the life of the body. The feeling itself won't extend beyond the life of the body. And the idea here is, I think, to be understood especially with regard to painful feelings, because sometimes painful feeling can be overwhelming, and one can be so oppressed by painful feeling that it can cause dejection and despair. But when one experiences, of course this is said with regard to any pleasant, painful, or neutral feeling, but especially when one feels this painful feeling, perhaps even on the brink of death, or if there's a terminal illness, one understands that this feeling will last only as long as the body lasts, only as long as life lasts. And then after death there'll be no renewal of feeling, because name and form and consciousness come to an end.
Thank you. Another question is about another sentence. He said not yet dwell having contacted with the body about the training.
Yeah.
Is there any ambiguity about that word not? Is it dwell, or is it the whole sentence from dwell having contacted with the body? My problem is the training has contacted with the body or not. On page 406. The second one,
okay, so please repeat the question. Now I have the sentence in front of me.
Okay. I don't know if having contacted with the body is included or not.
The way I understand it is, yes, it's definitely negated.
Because it seems to me there's ambiguity that can contact with the body, but he does not dwell.
I see. You see, the word dwell is used in the Pali text, viharati, sometimes almost a little bit like the word is used in English. It doesn't necessarily suggest continuing for some time in some state. So the way I would understand it, he has not yet contacted with the body, that which is their destination, culmination, fruit, and final goal. It seems to be indicating some deep experience of the final goal, where one actually, the way I express it, embodies it within oneself. But he has pierced it through with wisdom, that he actually sees it through wisdom. I believe that the earliest translator of the Samyutta Nikaya, I think this was F.L. Woodward, in his translation published by the Pali Text Society, he took the n here, the not, to be negating both parts of the sentence. So he had rendered it something like, he does not yet dwell, having contacted with the body, that which is their destination, and so on, nor having pierced it through with wisdom does he see it. So he took the not to extend to both parts. But the way I understood it, the way I understand it, and the commentary supports me on this, the first part is negated. He doesn't contact with the body, the destination. And then the ch here should be understood as what's called the adversarial ch, which means a ch that is functioning not like and, but as but. But, having pierced it through with wisdom, he sees. Any further questions? Okay, I have